먹으라고 그래. 돈 다 썼지. 이제 오늘 행복한 사람이 돈 없어.
행복 사니까 벌었겠다.
우리 딸 인지 몰라.
신세 사야 돼.
너빵 말면 안 돼. 너 밀가루 없이. 뭔데? 또 너 라면 먹으라카나?
나 먹어요.
한국을 말기도 싫은데. 어?
아니 먹을 거야 그래.
뭐를?
난 먹어요. 난 먹어요.
몰라 나. 이제
그런데 막
너 다른 거 먹으면 안 돼.
그럼 롯데리야. 그럼 롯데리야 사나 따다 롯데리야. 아 롯데리야?
아 몰라.
롯데리야?
이제 오늘 왜 없어?
아 진짜 손해.
엄마 돈 모지래 이거. 군대까지 가야 돼. 그 군대 안 가고 군대가 가야 돼.
에이 진이야.
어때? 이제 석류를 딸 수 있겠지? 어서 타봐 뽕지야. 응, 알았어. 자, 그럴까? 네, 좋아요.
호흡을 지켜라.
지켜라.
한 녀석도 고양이가 좋지. 그치만 이건 꼬마 친구들 줄 거란다. 내 잠시 밖에 나갔다 올 테니 귤 잘 지키고 있어야 한다, 맹더가.
뺑덕이가 귤 지킨다. 귤 지킨다.
벤더가 너야.
얘들아!
이거 아버지 끄네. 괜히.
이야, 재밌겠다.
왜 귤이지? 맛있겠다.
귤을 먹으면 안 돼.
왜?
할아버지가 꼬마 친구들 주실 거래. 그래서 뺑덕이가 귤 지켜야 해.
그래. 그럼 안 되겠네. 그럼 우리도 같이 귤 지켜줄게, 뺑덕. 당연하지. 왜? 지키는 거야. 우리 이거 언제까지 지키고 있어야 해? 하나만 먹으면 되니까.
중심에 있는 칙이 이겁니다. 마이크로 트렌드 S. 예, 이거 보고 있습니다. 이거 보고 있습니다. 현재. 예. BBC 한번 들어볼까요? 뭐 어떤 곳이 있는지. 자, 먼저 노래를 먼저 듣고.
다들 눈치를 준비됐지?
타고 던졌는데 Oh my god 화살은 내게 feel 하고 다시 날아와 날 괴롭히네 No 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 뭔데 나를 미치게 해 나도 나를 괜찮은데 어떻게 너는 나를 작아지게 하는 건지 I don't know 네 얼굴 행동 하나하나 다 Love it no 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 나를 봐 너만 봐 내 옆에만 꼭 붙어 있어줘 그대여 하지 마세요 Wing 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 Boomerang Hey 돌아버려 내가 누른 건지 달린 건지 Hey 돌아버려 Boom 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 너에게 다 달려가고 baby 내 품에 와줘 솔직하게 말해 예만 같은 남자 너도 빼고 let's go 너만 보는 바보 주위에서 놀려대 상관이 없어 다 뭐라 하던 내게 있으면 all I wanna do 네 얼굴 행동 하나하나 다 Love it no 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 나를 봐 너만 봐 내 옆에만 꼭 붙어 있어줘 그대여 가지 마세요 Wing 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 Boomerang Hey 날려버려 내가 걸릴 건지 오는 건지 Hey 날려버려 넌 나를 don't you know 얼마나 내 곁못하는지 I promise you I know 약속해 어디든 take you there 그 누가 뭐라던 I don't care 네 손에 반짝 끼워줄 수 있게 Wing 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 Hey 돌아버려 내가 누른 건지 달린 건지 Hey 돌아버려
There's a circular martial art, like circular motion, so it's very similar to salsa. I explain them, it's like dancing salsa, you have to move around the other person, so our trainings are very funny and like parties, but then it became serious when you understand that this is for our security, you know.
Susie, I'm interested to hear
이거는
how you
이거는
deal with women
만든
who are new to
단목입니다.
self-defense.
음악을
Do you get them to wear special clothes
만들죠.
in class, or do you get them to just wear their normal everyday clothes?
I ask women who take my course to wear their normal everyday clothes, simply because I found when I was training martial arts that often the women that I trained with were really, really great on the mats as long as they had their uniforms on, but the minute they put their regular clothes on, they no longer associated the techniques they learned with daily life. So women aren't necessarily attacked only when they're dressed for it. And I want people to be able to learn how to move in the clothes they normally wear. If you are someone who's given to wearing long, flowy skirts, for example, you need to know how to move so that you can trust your own body in the clothes you wear. You don't have to change the way that you look. My approach is really similar to Catalina's. I don't believe in fear-based training. I think a lot of traditional self-defense has come from the idea of fear, of creating an atmosphere of fear, and you have to be afraid, and that's your motivator. But I found that that's usually what pushes people away. So I try and establish a very warm and welcoming atmosphere. We also laugh a lot. We're in Germany, so we're not doing salsa, probably to everyone's content. But we tell jokes, we laugh, so that you make positive associations with learning to defend yourself. Like Catalina says, women, oftentimes the very first time they punch a kick pad, they're kind of like, oh, I'm not sure. But man, by the end of that first class, they are having the best time beating up my poor kick pads.
So, Catalina, is that the experience you have too? The first punches and kicks are a little bit tentative, but then your students get into it?
It's very funny because I make a joke about it. It's like they punch like kitties, like little kitties, like with soft movements, like I'm shy. But then when they understand that this is a safe environment and we're learning because we want to take care of each other and everything, they start to release their strength and they become this happy woman. Like, it's amazing the change that we found in this simply practice of self-defense. It's more than the body, it's more about our emotions. It's incredible.
What I found for me, and I think it's probably true for Catalina as well, that it's not so much that the women who participate in my courses are like releasing their feminist rage or their anger. They're actually just having a really good time hitting stuff.
Yes.
And I think it's something that Catalina pointed out earlier, that, you know, we're often told that punching and kicking and all these things aren't for girls. But they are. I mean, they're humans, you know. It's just ways that we move our body. And when women and girls are in an environment where they're allowed to do this with no repercussions and it is safe, and it's not somebody screaming at them going, hit harder, they really, really have a great time. And because it's fun. It's fun to kick those kick pads, and it's fun to punch them and know that you're not actually hurting anybody, but you are getting to experience your own strength.
Let's pause here. A reminder that you're listening to The Conversation on the BBC World Service. Today, we're talking about self-defense for women with two guests who specialize in teaching their female students how to protect themselves. Susie Kalek teaches self-defense in Berlin, Germany, and Catalina Carmona Balvin does the same in Bogota, Colombia. Now, Susie and Catalina, you both teach women with the specific aim of tackling gender-based violence. Catalina, why do you feel there was a need for women to learn self-defense in Colombia?
I think that Colombia or Latin America in general is very macho society and macho culture, you know. Violence is in every single stage of our lives. When something happens to us, they blame us. It's our fault because the clothes that we were wearing, the way that we were dancing, because we dance a lot. But when you realize that this society is very violent, and it's not just gender violence, in Colombia we have street violence, so I think that self-defense is a necessity here for us. This is our goal, giving women the opportunity to not consider themselves as victims and move this perception to be able to defend each other and ourselves.
Susie, I understand you've been working with female refugees in Berlin. How does that work, and what are the specific challenges you face in those classes?
The biggest challenge I face in those classes right now is language.
So just to be clear, these are refugees that you work with from Syria and Afghanistan? Is that right?
From Syria, Afghanistan, occasionally from Eritrea, and sometimes from places like Somalia, people who are fleeing violence. But most of the people that take my courses are either Arabic or Farsi speakers, neither of which I speak. So communication can be a bit difficult. I usually have to find a translator to work with. The courses are really interesting. Usually I'm contacted by a volunteer organization that works with refugees, which is easier because they're already in a group, so I always go to them. They don't come to my studio. The courses are different than the program that I offer in general.
How so?
They're designed for specific clothing because most of the women, not all of them, but most of the women, they're covered from their neck to their wrists. They are moving in those clothes or when those clothes are grabbed. So the techniques are a little bit different. Most women feel that if they defend themselves, what if the guy comes back angrier and punishes them more? It is a really big fear. So how do you defend yourself and then look like you're not defending yourself? So the moves that I teach are a little more subtle. They can easily be covered with, what do you mean? I was just moving my elbow.
Interesting. Can you give me a little bit more of a detailed description? So what kind of move would you adapt? So how would you teach it in a general class, and how would you teach it to a group of refugee women?
One of the moves that I teach that comes to mind at the moment, we call in my general class the head smash, which is just called that because it's entertaining to say. But it's a knee strike. The way that I teach it in my regular classes, it looks a lot like an aerobics move or a Taibo move, an ab crunch. You're standing kind of in a bit of a lunge. You pull your two hands down through the air on top of your knee as you thrust your knee up, like you're smashing a pumpkin on your knee. I teach the same move in refugee classes, but without such huge movements. So if a woman's skirt is being pulled, or if her wrist is being pulled or her arm, she can swing with the move, turning with the pull, and simply allow her knee to swing so that it looks like she took a misstep. But the knee swinging from the hip is a really powerful strike. It's hard to see that move specifically under a very large skirt.
But Lena, can you tell me about the person you've seen experience the greatest change after learning self-defense?
Yes, she's my best friend now. She was my second student. I think that the things that she found in self-defense or in my lessons is that she discovered that she is very strong, and she believed that now. So I don't know if I changed her life or anything, but I think that when I discovered this new confidence that she was having through my lessons, I understand the possibility to give this to the benefit of all of the women that I can reach. So I think that for me, I found that self-defense is not learning how to fight, it's a way to learning how to love.
Susie, if you could name one person, who's the person you've seen experience the greatest change after learning self-defense?
Actually, my mom. She's the first person that I tried Pretty Deadly out on. She had asked me to teach her self-defense because at the time she was living in an area of Chicago that was getting really dangerous due to gang violence. I knew that she was going to be very hard to teach. Like most mothers and daughters, I knew she was going to kind of resist being taught anything by her daughter. So I needed to teach her a few techniques so that she felt safe walking to her favorite coffee shop, basically, because her life was getting restricted because she felt really unsafe. And so we worked together for a little bit, and it was interesting to watch her go from saying, I can't do this, and I'm not like you, I didn't study martial arts, to really knocking me over, actually, with an elbow strike or a punch, and feeling really good and strong about it. At that time in her life, she wasn't exercising a lot, but learning a little bit of self-defense and feeling a little bit more free also helped motivate her to start exercising a little bit more and taking her dog out on longer walks and stopping smoking, which she did at the time. It's my mom, so of course I'm very biased. But on the other hand, her transformation was pretty big. And I think that was one of the things that motivated me more than anything to continue with this particular program. But I will say that a lot of women that come through my program, after the third class,
the entrant that still has a bit of a learning curve, maybe when it comes to regulatory, when it comes to compliance and the likes, or if you're the multinational player who has been around ever since herself. And with that regard, yes, scale matters, and we see that in a lot of M&A going on all around.
Well, absolutely, Sven, and you see, quite often when we do get slowdowns, as people get protective. But tell me, if we are seeing an economic slowdown, are you seeing any evidence for it?
Sorry, seeing evidence for
a slowdown out there, an economic slowdown.
We feel something. Of course, the movements in China. We are not directly involved in China with regards to having corporate clients there. We do have them in Hong Kong. We feel movements, and again, they are supporting the sentiment of uncertainty at points. But we also see benefits because in such times, it is while maybe overall trading volumes and thus also payment volumes might reduce. There's very often a shift in between participants. So people might be more open to an external vendor actually who gives them a different opinion on currency strategies, if you like, than their house bank would do at a point. So we see the developments. We don't necessarily see a negative business impact as in previous times of slowdowns. We actually managed quite well to turn this into a positive business movement. So we remain alert.
I'm wondering whether the delta T, the change relative to time, is happening at a rate that makes regulators a little uncomfortable. Is that your sense?
I tend to agree. There's certainly pressure coming up, or the need coming up to stay on top of things. And I think that we see regulators all around in the world getting more, aggressive is the wrong word, but getting more active, and you see more regulatory change happening. And I think Singapore and the MASC is a very good example of, I think, a great regulator who's very quickly putting changes into place. And obviously all the market participants are well consulted in implementing these as soon as they can.
Sven, I just thought we're going to bang on about the same theme here, but tell me something, what sort of growth are you seeing in the Asia Pacific currently, and how does that compare, let's say, to Europe?
It's exciting to be here because we are a global company. We're bringing similar products to the market everywhere. But what is really happening here, and what's great for us, is the increase and the increasing need in mass-paced solutions in particular. So that's about large clients who need to pay many vendors or maybe individuals all around the world. Good example is payroll. We've got numerous shipping clients here in Asia. They do payroll payments that need to be on the 25th of the month there, or on the right day, in the right amount, in the right currency. And then the actual rate is not important, as opposed to the previous scenario of volatility and so on. And that frequent pay and mass pay opportunity, very much integrated by technical solutions such as API connections and the likes. That's something we see grow here at times of three-digit growth rates, which is breathtaking. And that's particularly an Asian thing. So we see a great opportunity, particularly for that here.
Sven, pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much for being with us. Sven Jensen, I'm taking a liberty there. He is head of Asia Western Union Business Solutions, our guest here on Daybreak Asia. Right now it looks as though the market in Australia has gone negative. ASX 200 is down about 0.1%. Japan and South Korean market come online at the top of the hour. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Another day, another high-fashion scandal. Louis Vuitton says it was unaware of new accusations that Michael Jackson sexually abused children, highlighted in an HBO documentary when it paid homage to the singer at its latest menswear show. Designer Virgil Abloh's January show celebrated Jackson with an elaborate set and designs evoking the singer's world and style, all set to a soundtrack of his music. Well, a 19-ton glass sculpture lures shoppers to a six-figure watch boutique. Richard Mille sure hopes so. At its new New York flagship boutique, the high-end Swiss watchmaker created a 30-foot-tall, two-story moment of wow, essentially a mock of a watch shoppers walk through to get inside. Meanwhile, across town, related companies Hudson Yards has bet $2 billion a new Manhattan mall can succeed. The shops at Hudson Yards, which opened Friday, feature floor upon floor of luxury shops with the city's first Neiman Marcus as anchor tenant. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
As the global financial sector was hurtling headlong into a crisis, a network of brokers and traders from Wall Street's leading firms engineered a bold financial conspiracy. At the center of it stood Tom Hayes, a young Englishman whose genius for math and obsessive personality made him a trading phenomenon and ultimately led to his downfall. Based on hundreds of interviews with unprecedented access to the people involved, The Fix from Wiley and Bloomberg Press pulls back the curtain on the LIBOR scandal, available now in print and ebook format.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia for this Tuesday, March 19th in Hong Kong, Monday, March 18th in New York. Coming up this hour.
A mix to higher start for stocks in Asia after U.S. equities and oil gain.
A massive merger in the international payments industry.
The U.S. Ag Secretary calls Washington-Beijing trade talks dynamic and says concerns about biotech remain.
Here comes the IPO 36KR. The company tracks Chinese startup fundraising. I'm Rashad Salamat. I'll have the story.
Third May Brexit plan vote blocked. Reports she will ask for a 9 to 12-month Brexit delay. Probes into Boeing's relationship with the FAA may prevent the MAX jets from flying in the near future. Suspect arrested in the Netherlands tram attack. I'm Ed Baxter with Global News.
Will Kylian Mbappe or Neymar be leaving PSG this summer, while Haloti Ngata announces his retirement in a unique way? I'm Dan Schwartzman. I'll have those stories and more coming up in Bloomberg Sports.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Welcome to the third hour of the program, 9 in the morning in the Japanese capital, and the Nikkei 225 is down about 0.2%. We'll talk more about markets in a moment. If you're joining us from the region, good morning. I'm Doug Krisner at the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, I'm Juliet Zali in Singapore. That's a bit exciting. You're hanging out with Ed. Well, we are seeing a little bit of a mixed start to the trading session this Tuesday, Australia, New Zealand weaker. The Kospi, though, up by about 0.2% and some weakness in the Nikkei, Doug.
Yeah, right now, Nikkei 225 is, as you mentioned, down about 0.2%. Kind of interesting because we did have an update for the market today. Not a lot of movement in currencies. The Dow was ahead about 0.3%. Oil, a big story. Price of crude in New York above 59 a barrel, and many of the energy names led the S&P 500 higher to a 5-month high, incidentally, with a gain of about 0.4%. We saw a similar advance for the NASDAQ composite. But the week ahead is filled with potential catalysts, not the least of which a couple of key central bank meetings. We got the Fed on tap, along with the Bank of England, and then in the APAC region, we'll hear from four different central banks: Indonesia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Thailand. The U.S. 10-year Treasury right now in the Tokyo session yielding 2.59%. So we've come in just a little bit in terms of yield, and crude oil down below 59 a barrel right now in the electronic session. Juliet?
Well, a big merger in the payments business, Fidelity National Information Services, paying more than $35 billion to acquire WorldPay, $43 billion if you include assumed debt. This is the biggest deal ever in the international payments sector. Bloomberg's Catherine Chiglinski says a growing number of companies feel a need to be in the business.
By their estimates, they said it should be about a $3 trillion market for global e-commerce volume, and so everyone sort of wants a piece of that pie.
FIS and WorldPay both provide the tech that lets consumers securely pay an overseas vendor on an e-commerce site or tap cards to buy a cup of coffee. And we'll be talking more about this global industry later in the program.
The most popular Netflix-like streaming service in China is angling to build a short video app. We have that story from Bloomberg's Yvonne Men.
iQIYI wants to start an entertainment-oriented service that says it tries to make a splash in an arena already crowded with viral phenoms from ByteDance's Douyin to Tencent-backed Kuai Show. Here's how CEO Gong Yu put it to us through a translator.
I hope before the end of 2020 that we can get an app with more than 10 million users.
The Baidu-controlled company has good reason to be focused on this fast-growing market. iQIYI was China's largest video streaming site in January, ahead of Tencent and Alibaba's Youku. But Gong says ad revenue growth has peaked and is beginning to slow. In Hong Kong, I'm Yvonne Mann, Bloomberg, Daybreak Asia.
Well, as for US-China trade talks, there was a story out over the weekend saying that a Trump-Xi meeting mightn't take place until June. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue is calling the talks with Beijing very dynamic. We get more from Bloomberg's Denise Pellegrini.
Perdue telling reporters China has offered some very attractive numbers for purchase of U.S. farm goods, but he also told us at the National Grain and Feed Association's annual convention in Florida, the U.S. is still ironing out details, including how commitments would be enforced and implemented. And he also says Washington still has some concerns over biotechnology, including about setting up a framework that would allow ag biotech innovations to flow into China in the future without being curbed by non-tariff barriers. An ag negotiator for the U.S. Trade Rep's office says the U.S. is also still pushing to address structural trade issues. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg, Daybreak Asia.
Pakistan has a plan to shore up its foreign reserves. It includes a $2 billion loan from China. A story from Bloomberg's Remy Inocencio.
Pakistan State Bank governor says he expects the commercial loan from China to come in this week or next. This would be to beef up forex reserves and help stabilize the economy. Pakistan's facing a financing gap, and S&P Global Ratings downgraded its credit score last month amid a delay in a deal with the IMF. Tariq Bajwa also says an agreement for Pakistan's 13th IMF bailout since the late 80s will likely be clinched by the end of this April. He spoke from the sidelines of the Bloomberg Pakistan Economic Forum in Karachi. Other officials say Pakistan is also looking to raise money, selling its first panda bonds. Ramy Inocencio, Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
And speaking of Pakistan, IHOP plans to open its first location in the country by the end of the year. It's part of the pancake chain's efforts to seek new revenue abroad. The first will open in Karachi, followed by 18 more across the country over the next 9 years.
All right, let's talk Brexit now as we go to global news. Another major roadblock in the UK. Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit plan may be leading to a Brexit delay. Ed Baxter covering this and the rest of global news from the Bloomberg 916 newsroom in San Francisco. Delay, that seems to be the operative word, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of the MPs were aiming at in the first place. Now, a third vote on our Brexit deal was stopped, Doug, today by the Speaker of the House, John Bercow, or Bercow, I should say, ruling the government cannot resubmit the same proposal as last week. He says the second vote was a bit different.
The government's second meaningful vote motion was accompanied by the publication of 3 new documents.
So Bloomberg's Michael McKee says this thwarts the May plan.
My way or the highway, we drop out if we don't pass this. And that seems to have been perhaps her administration's plan all along. And now Mr. Bercow, Speaker Bercow, has thrown what you like to colloquially call a spanner in the works.
Well, yeah, Sun is reporting that Theresa May will now ask the EU for a 9 to 12 month delay in the divorce. And The Guardian is reporting the EU countries are working on some kind of a delay proposal and most probably will agree. There's growing concern that Boeing may not be able to get the MAX family of aircraft back into the air as soon as it wants. Not only are investigations going on into the two crashes themselves, but into the relationship between Boeing and the FAA, and that they began even before the second crash. Bloomberg Intelligence George Ferguson says what they're finding is that Boeing and the FAA have had a very close relationship, a positive one. But
I think what we're finding out now is perhaps it went a bit too far here, as Boeing was pushing to develop the MAX in response to the Airbus A320neo.
Yeah, which could delay getting the planes back into the air. Dutch police have arrested a suspect in the tram shootings in Utrecht.
We do not know
as yet as to what his motives are. We do not exclude any type of motive.
Dutch Justice Minister Ferdinand Grapperhaus says 3 killed, 5 injured. And up on the Bloomberg terminal, a Yonhap story that tries to explain what happened in Hanoi. 2 different roads, apparently. South Korea's top diplomat, Kang Kyung-hwa, says the U.S. wanted to talk big picture and North Korea wanted to talk only denuclearization of the Yongbyon nuclear complex. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg. God bless her.
All right, our guest for the half hour is James Otis. He is Senior Wealth Manager at Shawn Partners, on the line from Sydney. A lot of central bank action in the coming week, at least if you read the headlines, but under the surface, we're probably unlikely to see a lot of movement. Wouldn't you say that's a safe bet?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're going to see some interesting commentary out of the Fed and see whether they're going to back down on potentially having 2 rate rises this year and, maybe move towards the 1. And that's certainly what the market wants to hear. And if they say anything different to that, it might cause a little bit of volatility in the markets and equities might get sold off a little bit. But I think that they'll pretty much a whole pattern. They're going to come out and say that they're going to be data dependent. And absolutely, that's what they should be doing.
Yeah, we'll probably hear the word patient as well, James. But this has a lot of ramifications for central banks around the Asia Pacific, particularly as the Fed starts to turn more dovish. We've got a number of central bank meetings in Asia this week as well. What are you expecting that could mean in terms of, central banks then looking to be a little bit more dovish themselves?
Well, obviously the emerging market of Asia doesn't want to see that the US dollar's, rallying too hard, and so, we may see if the Fed does give that patient guidance, then it's going to give more pause for the US dollar to continue to rally. So, on that basis, I think that'll be work in favour of emerging market assets. But yeah, there's a lot of things at play, and obviously one of the big things which we can't seem to get past is Brexit, and so that's probably the sort of Damocles hanging over the market at the moment to an extent.
No kidding. Yeah, we're going to hear from the Bank of England as well this week. But in your backyard, the RBA, I mean, is there the case now that we're going to get the minutes from the last meeting later today, but I mean, is the case building in Australia that we could be seeing a rate cut before too long?
Well, it's something that I chatted with you guys about over the course of the last year and even more, where I thought that the RBA would like to lower rates to stimulate broader GDP. We've got a situation obviously coming up with the national election in May, and so the RBA is not want to actually move ahead of that. But I think that shortly after that they'll probably lower rates, and that seems to be being what's priced into the market at the moment. But interestingly, the Aussie dollar doesn't seem to be reacting, holding at the 71 figure level, and it doesn't seem to be able to break the big figure 70 to the downside, even though we're seeing US 10 years paying about 63 basis points better than Australian 10-year government yield. So, there's a lot of things at play there, but I'd like to see the RBA actually lower rates, and hopefully that'll be stimulatory to us here.
Well, we continue the conversation. I'd like to switch the focus, talk a little bit about China and the extent to which the economy is slowing there, and what more the Chinese authorities can do. I mean, we know they've done a lot so far. What more can they do to revive the growth rate in China? James Otis is Senior Wealth Manager at Shaw & Partners. He's joining us from Sydney, and right now, in terms of market action in Sydney, ASX 200 is down 0.2%. Also some weakness in Tokyo and Seoul. That story is coming up on Daybreak Asia. This is Bloomberg.
The art and antiques world is constantly evolving. Trends come and go. Fashions change. But the one constant is exquisite 18th century English furniture. Always in good taste. Always in style. In business for 50 years, Hyde Park Antiques showcases the most extensive and finest inventory of pure 18th and early 19th century English furniture on either side of the Atlantic. Simply set foot in our 20,000 square foot gallery and you're transported to another time. Living with antiques brings a feeling of continuity with the graciousness of the past and the sense of assurance into the future. Hyde Park Antiques acquires antique furniture from estates and from across the globe. No reproductions. Each piece is absolutely genuine and of the period represented. See our stunning collection online at HydeParkAntiques.com. That's HydeParkAntiques.com. Hyde Park Antiques, where good taste never goes out of fashion.
What would you say about the firm that supports your advisory practice?
I love that I can call in and get expert advice.
I love that you answer the phone and that I'm not a number.
I love the sense of community.
The culture is great, and I love the service.
Real quotes from real advisors. In fact, advisors are head over heels about Commonwealth Financial Network. And it shows. J.D. Power has named us highest in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms 5 times in a row. Why so smitten? Maybe because we've been putting relationships first since 1979, starting with our accountability to you and your clients alone. The consistent investments we make to ensure that you have every possible tool, support, and competitive advantage. And the fact that you can trust us to have your back through both good and challenging times. Visit Commonwealth.com and find out what it feels like to be swept off your feet. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor, broker-dealer. For J.D. Power 2018 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
After graduating from NJIT, Maria Kuzam joined pharmaceutical giant Merck & Company. As a chemical engineer, she's part of Merck's Global Engineering Solutions and leads worldwide communications for the Merck Women's Network. She also helps the company recruit new talent from top universities like NJIT.
I think NJIT graduates, they really come in and hit the ground running, right? They know how to problem solve. They've been prepared for it. They know how to work individually as well as in teams. They have that kind of flexibility to work both ways, and that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for someone that is able to do both, is able to do the individual work, but also work across teams and communicate effectively. And I think NJIT is definitely helping us with providing some of that key talent pool, and having that leadership capability is invaluable.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at storiesofinnovation.njit.edu.
Two economic authorities every weekday. Can you read Log Banks right now? And guests too. Tom Keene. How much is it of the biggest cost as they rationalize out to 3 years? Jonathan Farrell.
Is that tension point big enough to get it to pull a 180?
Bloomberg Surveillance.
We're finding out it was worse than a lot of people thought.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom or dad but don't know where to start? Hi, I'm Joan London with The Place for Mom. Nobody knows your parent or loved one better than you, and nobody knows senior living better than the experts at A Place for Mom. It's a free service, and we've helped thousands of families find the right place for their mom or dad. There's a place for answers, A Place for Mom. Call today.
Call A Place for Mom at 1-800-391-1755. That's 1-800-391-1755.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. It's a quarter past the hour. Time for a check of sports from around the world. Here's Dan Schwartzman. Thanks, Doug. Reports say Paris Saint-Germain has received assurances from the agents of both Neymar and Kylian Mbappe that the clients will not push for transfers this summer. While both have been rumored to be on the radar for Real Madrid, now seems neither will be leaving Parc de France. Sources report that Manchester United has no interest in going after Real Madrid star Gareth Bale this coming summer. Reports say Bale's age and his wages are prohibitive for the Red Devils to make a run at the Wales International. 29-year-old's future at the Santiago Bernabeu is up in the air with the return of manager Zinedine Zidane. Seattle Mariners manager Scott Servais has announced that Ichiro Suzuki will start for Seattle Wednesday against the Oakland A's as the Major League Baseball season opens in Tokyo. The 45-year-old's future past the two-game series is uncertain, as the Mariners roster will shrink from 28 to 25. The Red Sox announcing that former MVP second baseman Dustin Pedroia will start the season on the injured list as the 35-year-old continues to recover from a left knee injury that was surgically repaired back in 2017. Troy only played in 3 games last year. Lots of NFL news as the Miami Dolphins have signed quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick to a 2-year deal worth $11 million. While after 7 years, the Cincinnati Bengals have released linebacker Vontaze Burfict. Meanwhile, former All-Pro defensive tackle Haloti Ngata has announced his retirement while atop Mount Kilimanjaro, while the Oakland Raiders have released tackle Donald Penn after 5 years. I'm Dan Schwartzman, that's your Bloomberg NBC World Sports Update.
Global news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Juliette Zali in Singapore at 17 minutes past the hour. We check the markets every 15 minutes here on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. We are seeing a little bit of a muted start to the trading session. In fact, most major indices now tracking lower. The Nikkei off by 0.6%, 21,459 points. As we see a bit of strength coming through in the Japanese yen, it is firmer by about 0.1% at 111.27. Of course, traders awaiting central bank meetings not only in Asia this week, but also the Fed's 2-day policy meeting, which could reinforce this dovish tilt to monetary policy. The Aussie dollar at its highest level in 2 weeks ahead of the RBA's minutes from its latest meeting, and as we see iron ore rising for a 4th session on supply concerns. We're also waiting 4th quarter house price index for Australia. Expectations of a 2% drop in the 4th quarter, 5% year-on-year, so
further signs there of a deteriorating housing market. In terms of other commodities that we're watching, Shanghai aluminum up by about 0.5%. Steel futures in Shanghai are firmer as well by 1.2%. And as I mentioned, iron ore continuing to rise. And the Singapore contract is up by 0.4% at $86.46 a tonne. Having a look at other currencies, I mentioned yen strength, but we are seeing the Aussie, the Kiwi, the Taiwan dollar all weaker. And bonds are a little bit mixed. There is an auction of 20-year Japanese bonds today. That's a quick check of markets. Let's get it over to Ed in San Francisco for Global News. Ed.
All right, thank you, Juliette. Delay in Brexit looks much more probable. The Speaker of the UK House of Commons preventing a third vote on the Theresa May Brexit deal, saying it violates parliamentary rules. Now, the Sun newspaper is reporting that Theresa May will ask for a 9 to 12 month delay in Brexit. There had been an earlier Guardian report that the EU was going to look at some kind of extension this week as well. So it looks like that the road may be most traveled. Up on the Bloomberg terminal, meanwhile, Yonhap story saying that at Hanoi, the U.S. and North Korea had two very different paths. The U.S. looking at talking total denuclearization and Kim Jong-un talking denuclearization at one site, the Yongbyon nuclear complex. Bloomberg Intelligence reporting that not only are investigations going on into the two crashes of the MAX 8, but at the relationship between Boeing and the FAA, and that those investigations began even before the second crash. Dutch police have arrested a suspect in the tram shootings at Utrecht. 3 killed, 5 injured. Chinese Prime Minister, Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a European visit later this week. Italy, France, and Monaco, a chance for Xi to try and get more influence in the EU, and at a time with strained relations with the U.S. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg, and back across the hall, Douglas.
All right, Ed, thanks so much. Back to our conversation with James Otis, the Senior Wealth Manager at Shaw and Partners, on the line from Sydney. So let's talk a little bit about China. I teased this story out earlier in the media review. Came courtesy of the Wall Street Journal. They're saying, look, fellas, we know that things are slowing in China, and they've done a lot. But today's effort, if you were to compare what is going on now in terms of stimulus, compare that to the package that they presented back in 2008, right after the global financial crisis, then it represented about 13% of GDP. Today, it's only about 2%. Have they come up short, do you think? Are we going to see a slower growth rate for some time to come?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously we're coming off historical highs in terms of GDP up around the 7 mark. So we're looking, we had a print of 6.6% last year, and that's flattening out to 6.2 and 6. I think that, each year with China growing the way that it has been growing, that it's getting incrementally more difficult for them to hold these, percentage growth rates. So, on a net basis each year, the GDP numbers are going up in dollar terms significantly. So, we've got to expect that there's going to be some petering off growth there. In terms of the stimulatory effects, as you just outlined, I think that's very interesting that they're slowing down on that spend. But I think China's actually okay. It's just, I don't know where the answer is, and obviously Australia's very reliant on them, but, hopefully they at least hold that 6% level. So it'll be interesting to see what they print in 4 weeks in terms of GDP numbers. And so we don't really have much on the data for China ahead of that. We've got so many, obviously, PMI numbers coming in, the Caixin numbers coming in.
Yeah, speaking of those PMIs, copper often a little bit of an indicator as well, and there's been an interesting story on the Bloomberg today saying that the climb in copper this year is providing some confidence that the global economy can regain momentum. Do you think that is likely to be reflected in PMIs, not only for China but also more globally?
Yeah, I was thinking my pick for the year was that copper would rally about 17%. So far we've done 10.6% at the upside. So, we're 62% at the way where I thought it was going to go. But we get flipped to iron ore, where I thought it was only going to be up about 8%, and it's up 267% above what I'd expected it to be, being up 21% for the year. So we are seeing the commodities rally pretty strongly. Same with the oils. WTI's up the better part of 30%, and Brent's up 25% year to date. So there's a lot of strength in the commodities, and we've even got gold to the upside. So back to your question with copper was the one that probably I failed to recognise was a canary in the coal mine last year because everything was going great up until October, and then suddenly, copper had been telling us earlier on that we weren't going to, go into the back end of the year as strongly, and that certainly played out that we actually, went to the downside. So with copper being stronger this year, to the extent that it is up 10%, as long as that can kind of continue to grind to the upside, then the market should, continue to rally off of that.
I'm curious though, James, the degree to which some of this may be the market discounting a U.S.-China trade deal, and then when that is officially announced, or at least the framework for some kind of path forward here, that some of these assets like commodities, and you mentioned copper there, I'm wondering if they come off the highs.
Well, I'm not sure that the market is pricing it in. I'll obviously respect your view on that one, but I think that the market's not fully priced in any type of significant trade agreement. But obviously, what's going to be a big play over the course of the next 12 months, 18 months, years to come is whether or not any trade agreement that is, does come to resolution actually gets applied and that it's adhered to. So that's something that we're obviously going to have to watch, and that's a big unknown for the future.
All right, James, always great to get your insights. Thanks for joining us, James Ordis, Senior Wealth Management Manager, Shaw and Partners, on the line from Sydney there for us, where we are seeing stocks under pressure today. The ASX 200, though, faring a little better than some of the other markets, down by 0.1%, 6,186. We are about to get the RBA minutes. The
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. Save the wheels. Three simple words that have at times been twisted into eternal ridicule against those who speak out on behalf of creatures that can't speak for themselves. Their plight can seem distant, even abstract. Why should woe be inconvenience for them? You can't even get a single plastic bag at the grocery store soon. They'll take away our drinking straws. And what? Environmentalists and marine experts say it's so this will stop happening. This past weekend, an emaciated-looking juvenile-beaked whale was spotted off the Philippines, struggling through the water. It very soon died, and the look inside turned out this. Its belly was bursting with what turned out to be 88 pounds of plastic waste, numerous plastic bags, big tangles of nylon rope blocking food, and eventually starving it to death. That's not all. Its stomach acid, unable to break down the plastic waste, had worn holes through its stomach lining. The United Nations estimates 100,000 marine mammals are killed every year by plastic pollution. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Rich is just a really, really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him in virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
James, great to see you. It's been too long.
Hi, Janice. It sure has. Is what I heard true? Your company hired a new head of talent management?
Well, not exactly. She's temporary for now, but she's working out great and saving us money.
A temporary head of talent management? I didn't even know that was possible.
Wait, haven't you heard of Sirius?
Should I have?
Yes, Sirius Executives. They allow you to hire qualified, vetted executives on a temporary, part-time, or interim basis.
Wow, I need to make my operations more efficient. I could really use some help.
You should give Sirius a try. Our company had a special project recently, and we hired a temporary COO for just 1 day a week.
This will be perfect for us. How is Sirius spelled?
With a C. C-E-R-I-U-S.
C-E-R-I-U-S. Got it. Janice, you are a lifesaver.
Make the right hire the first time. Cover your company's leadership staffing gap on an interim, temporary, or part-time basis in less than a week. Learn more at SiriusExecutives.com. C-E-R-I-U-S. Executives.com.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. When you need to know something is often just as important as what you need to know. So, Bloomberg makes sure you get detailed financial news, while the rest of the world is still figuring out what happened yesterday.
Quarterly earnings fell short of analyst estimates.
Bloomberg Daybreak with Karen Muskow and Nathan Hager.
Musk has been in trouble before over his Twitter feed.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. FM Channel 119 and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
It is 8:30 a.m. in Hong Kong, and here in Singapore, I'm Juliette Zali.
And I'm Doug Krisner at the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in San Francisco. We've got a little bit of weakness now in early trading across the APAC region for those markets that are up and running. The Nikkei is down 0.5%. Slight losses in both Sydney and Seoul. We'll talk more about what's happening in markets in a moment. Right now, we want to get you caught up on this hour's top business stories.
Well, Fidelity National Information Services is paying more than $35 billion to acquire WorldPay, $43 billion with assumed debt. It is the biggest deal ever in the international payments sector, and Bloomberg's Catherine Chiglinski says a growing number of companies feel a need to be in the business.
There's sort of this need to make sure that you're staying on top of those changes, and that you can handle payments, whether it's sort of in an in-store situation or online.
FIS and WorldPay both provide the tech that lets consumers securely pay an overseas vendor on an e-commerce site or tap cards to buy a cup of coffee. And we'll be talking more about this global industry later in the program.
Yeah, U.S.-China trade. What's going on there? Where we spoke earlier with Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue, he is calling the talks with Beijing very dynamic, but he also says that Washington still has some concerns, especially when it comes to biotechnology, including the setting up of a framework to allow ag-biotech innovations to flow into China without facing non-tariff barriers.
Well, Revlon shares came under serious pressure in after-hours trade, finishing around 9% lower. That is after the company warned its delayed 10K filing may reveal a material weakness in its financial reporting controls for the year-end. It also reported a tough quarter where sales slipped.
All right, we have Chinese rival to the website TechCrunch planning an overseas IPO. That story from Bloomberg's Rashad Salamat.
36KI is said to be targeting at least $100 million listing of its media business. We're also hearing that the Beijing-based company that tracks startup fundraisings in China is considering listing in the US this year. Demand for this information is growing. Bloomberg data show Chinese companies completed $43 billion of first-time share sales overseas last year. That's the most since 2014, and Bain & Company saying 80% of Greater China-focused funds are considering or actively pursuing new economy deals. In Hong Kong, I'm Rashad Salam at Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Well, Cathay Pacific Airways mining the data of its business class customers to get them to keep spending. CEO Rupert Hogg says the company has spent a lot on data capacity to find out what its premium customers like and is now tailoring offers specific to them. Hogg also says Cathay plans to introduce a new business class product later this year that's focused partly on comfort for sleeping.
We've got some headlines coming out of the Foxconn plant in Wisconsin. The company says its manufacturing facility there will be operational and producing flat panel screens by the end of 2020. Construction is set to begin later this year. Foxconn sending mixed signals earlier this year when it talked about suspending the project, or at least scaling it way back. Now, if the Taiwanese company does invest $10 billion and does hire 13,000 people, it would qualify for $4 billion in state and local tax credits.
All right, we are seeing a little bit of weakness in the Aussie dollar, 70.98, as we get the minutes coming through from the Reserve Bank of Australia after their March 5th meeting, saying considerable uncertainty around the consumption outlook, agreed that labour market developments are particularly important, but also saying that they see no strong case for a near-term adjustment in policy. So just essentially reiterating what we've already heard from the RBA. Also seeing some weakness coming through in terms of the Aussie house price index, falling 2.4% in the fourth quarter, below estimates for a drop of 2%. That means that over the year, the house price index in Australia has fallen 5.1%, well below what we had seen in the prior year of a drop of 1.9%. So that's just going to add to those pains for the RBA as we see that deteriorating house market. The Aussie market down 0.1%, 6,186. And of course, we are awaiting the Fed's policy meeting. You're seeing some yen strength. The Nikkei is weaker by 0.5% at 21,479. It is a bit more of a risk-off session. The Kospi is flat today. The New Zealand market is down 0.2% at 9,495 points. In terms of commodities, we were talking to James Ordus earlier. He was saying you have seen a lot of strength coming through in this commodities market, and particularly in the Shanghai futures today. Aluminium up by 0.5%, steel up by 1.2%, iron ore firmer for a fourth session in the Singapore exchange. It is up 0.4% at $86.46, and gold slightly firmer, $1,305 an ounce. Let's get a quick check of oil. Of course, we've been watching what's been happening at OPEC. Brent and WTI fairly steady. WTI $59 a barrel. Let's get a check now of global news with Ed Baxter in San Francisco. Ed.
All right, thank you very much, Julia. It's looking more and more as if there could be a Brexit delay. Speaker of the UK House of Commons has prevented a third vote on the Theresa May Brexit plan. Speaker John Bercow.
What the government cannot legitimately do is to resubmit to the House the same proposition or substantially the same proposition as that of last week, which was rejected by 149 votes.
He says it cannot be similar. Bloomberg's Michael McKee says interpretation is tight, and this has not been used recently.
That you cannot bring back a measure that is substantially the same as one that has already been rejected by the House. It hasn't been used since 1920, this rule.
And the Sun newspaper reporting Theresa May will ask for a 9 to 12 month delay in the divorce. Meanwhile, The Guardian is reporting the EU is already working on a delay proposal. Whether it'll be the same time frame, well, that's another question. U.S. Department of Justice looking into the relationship between Boeing and the FAA before the second MAX 8 crash. Boeing and the FAA have worked very closely on bringing planes to market, but Bloomberg Intelligence George Ferguson says, well, it may have gotten too close.
Makes Boeing look pretty bad here, and I think it probably increases the hurdle of getting the 737 MAX back into the marketplace. And so in my view, it means that a lot of the world's regulators will have more influence over whether or not this airplane is ready to re-enter service.
And the investigations into the crash's cause themselves is ongoing. Up on the Bloomberg terminal, a Yonhap story that tries to explain what happened in Hanoi and the summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump. South Korea's top diplomat, Kang Kyung-hwa, says the U.S. wanted to talk big picture, North getting rid of its nuclear missile programs altogether, while Kim was limiting its talks to, well, sites one state to denuclearize the Yongbyon nuclear complex, and that Kim demanded the lifting of some sanctions with that step. So it's the same old question coming back. what do they mean by denuclearization? Definitely different definitions. And former U.S. President George W. Bush is calling on Congress to deliver comprehensive immigration reform.
Makes Boeing look pretty bad here, and I think...
I'm sorry, that is the wrong cut. Mr. Bush is saying that let's get that cut.
I hope those responsible in Washington can dial down the rhetoric, put politics aside, and modernize our immigration laws soon.
He and Laura Bush out today saying that immigrants form the backbone of his state, Texas, and of the United States of America. A firm message toward the White House and fellow Republican. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg. All right, Doug.
I'll take it, Ed. Thanks so much. Let's get to sports now with Dan Schwartzman. And Dan, is Real Madrid looking to add a striker?
Great question, Juliet. They may be in the market for one. As former Inter Milan captain Mauro Icardi, the relation between him and his club has deteriorated to the point the transfer fee may have dropped around 80 million euros from an original release clause price of 110 million. Now, they are always interested in Harry Kane, but there's a reported 350 million euro release clause for Kane, so Icardi is viewed as a cheaper option at striker for Real Madrid. Sources report that Manchester United has no interest in going after Real Madrid star Gareth Bale this coming summer. Reports say Bale's age and his wages are prohibitive for the Red Devils to make a run at the Wales International. The 29-year-old's future at the Santiago Bernabeu up in the air with the return of manager Zinedine Zidane. Reports say Paris Saint-Germain has received assurances from the agents for both Neymar and Kylian Mbappe that the clients will not push for transfers this summer, while both have been rumored to be on the radar of Real Madrid, and now seems neither is going to be leaving Parc des Princes. Seattle Mariners manager Scott Servais announcing that Ichiro Suzuki will start for Seattle Wednesday against the Oakland A's as the Major League Baseball season opens in Tokyo. The 45-year-old's future past the two-game series at the Tokyo Dome is uncertain, as the Mariners roster will shrink from 28 to 25. Boston Red Sox announcing that former MVP second baseman Dustin Pedroia will start the season on the injured list as the 35-year-old continues to recover from a left knee injury that was surgically repaired back in 2017. Pedroia only playing in 3 games last year. NBA scoreboard, local teams in action, 2:20 remaining in the third quarter. Washington trailing Utah 85-65. At the half, Denver leads at Boston 55-52. Minute 30 to go before halftime. Toronto 69, the New York Knicks 49. 18 seconds to go in the first quarter. San Antonio 23, Golden State 21. I'm Dan Schwartzman. That's your Bloomberg NBC World Sports Update. Back to you, Juliet.
Dan, thanks so much. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, what could stop consumers from giving up cash in favor of e-payments? We're going to talk to the founder and CEO of GeoSwift, who'll be joining us in the Singapore studio to tell us more. Having a look at markets, it's a little bit more of a risk-off tone. The Nikkei off by 0.5%. The Australian market and dollar holding up fairly well despite a very strong plunge in house prices. This is Bloomberg.
All money managers might seem the same, but while some give their clients cookie-cutter portfolios, Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to your goals and needs. Some only call when they have something to sell. Fisher calls regularly, so you stay informed. And while some advisors are happy to earn commissions whether you do well or not, Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when you do better. In other words, we're on your side. Maybe that's why most of our clients come from other money managers. So if you're in or nearing retirement, talk with us and find out why investors are switching to and staying with Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments. Clearly better money management. Investments in securities involve the risk of loss. Visit us at FisherInvestments.com to find out what we can do for you.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to. Nope. I'm sure you've got a perfectly good excuse. Kids, work. I get it. You're busy. So what better time than now? Let's begin. Raise one finger if you're a man. Ladies, none yet. Oh, counting your head if you're driving. Now, 3 more fingers for everyone over 60, 2 over 50, 1 over 40, 1 more if you're not physically active, another finger if anyone in your family has type 2 diabetes, another if you've got high blood pressure, if you're overweight, raise another finger, 2 if you're very overweight, and 3 if you're really overweight. You've just taken the world's first audio pre-diabetes test. And if you're holding up 5 or more fingers, visit doihaveprediabetes.org or talk to your doctor. There's no excuse because prediabetes can be reversed.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Sirius executives. When I first heard of Sirius, I was a little skeptical. What is an interim executive? When they told me one executive at 1 day a week can help us get double-digit growth, I was shocked. I didn't even know that was possible. And here we are 12 months later. And
제발요.